This is my 20th video in my Casting Shadows series, and it's about dappled light. And it's in my book, Ellen's Guide to Casting Shadows, where the Kindle is only $5. Tree shadows take different forms. Shadows of trunks result in linear patterns. Shadows of branches cause more of a lacy appearance, but still predominantly straight, while shadows of tree edges vary considerably depending on the type of tree, like this palm tree. All of these could be called dappled light, although typically the term refers to shade caused by foliage. Dappled light occurs when cones of light go through sky holes in foliage, giving a spotty appearance on the ground. What do you think is wrong with this painting I made when I was a beginner? What is the direction of the light? Is it sunny or cloudy? No one knows because back then I didn't consider the lighting, a common beginner mistake. These are supposed to be trees, but they look like a green wall. A bird would hit his beak if he tried to fly through that. The problem is a lack of sky holes. And when I photoshopped in sky holes, the trees looked airier and more realistic. This picture shows a tree with yellow sky holes. The trees are the positive space, while the sky holes are the negative spaces. We know that foliage defines the type of tree, and since foliage and sky holes are reciprocal, then sky holes must also define the type of tree. In this first tree, we can see that the holes get smaller as they get toward the periphery, and at the periphery there aren't very many sky holes. For the second tree here, it has sky holes mainly on the periphery and not in these central areas. Also notice the value and color of the background because that changes the sky hole. So there's a line here where the sky holes above it are light and the sky holes below it are dark. Let's look at the sky holes in this painting. They're different sizes and shapes. Their edges are soft, and they're darker than the open sky, so they don't stand out. Over here, I lightened them and gave them sharp edges, and that makes them come forward, so they don't stay in the background, and it makes the painting look spotty and unrealistic. When should you use dappled light? It sets a warm, inviting mood. Maybe because it reminds us of sitting under a tree on a sunny summer day. You just want to say, ah. It helps unify the image, like bringing together the bench, the walkway, and the rocks. It adds rhythm and patterns, usually best seen over simple objects without their own patterns. In this picture, we see different colors in the shade, but not in the light areas, making the light seem intense, as if bleaching out details and colors. I compared the values to Photoshop scale, where 0% black is white and 100% black is black. For the light areas, they're about 10% black, and the dark areas here are about 60% black, so that's a 50-point spread. The dappled light here serves as an eye path leading to the focus, which is the red coat. The light areas get smaller with distance. The light areas are about 30% black. The dark areas are 90% black, which is a 60-point spread. Dappled light is less effective if it covers competing patterns, like the feathers of the albatross bird and the chess set. Dappled light is also seen on tree trunks and branches. It helps indicate their form by wrapping around them. My drawing here shows dappled shade as well as cast shadows like the one for this bucket. Since they are both shadows blocking light, they have the same values or degrees of darkness. The difference is that the dappled light and shade have softer edges than the shadows for the buckets because the trees are further away than the buckets. Also, the soft edges suggest wind blowing the leaves. Hard edges would stop that movement. Here are some approaches when using dappled light. You could show both the foliage and its shadow, creating a balanced image. Alternatively, you could just show the shadow, where the viewer is actively involved determining the type of tree. And a third approach is to show the dappled light falling on everything in the scene. Sometimes we can actually see the cones of light, and they come down as sunbeams. So if you have sunbeams, you must have dappled light. Here we have sunbeams, but no evidence really of dappled light on the ground. But the opposite doesn't occur, obviously. You can have dappled light without sunbeams. Viewers tend to look at pictures longer if there's something to examine. Here, the grass in the shade and the walkway are about the same degree of darkness. We see them because of the dappled light. The dappled light on the grass is green, while the dappled light on the walkway is orange. So we can follow these little orange dappled light like stepping stones, so we can figure out where the walkway goes, and this softens the shape. Can we see dappled light on water? Well, we usually see reflections. So here's a tree trunk and its reflection in the water. And these are reflections of sky holes. But there are a few situations where we see shadows on water, which I described in my first video. One of them is when water has pollen on it. We still see the reflections of the foliage, the green part here, and the sky, the blue part. But we also see a shadow, a darkening right here. And we see spots of light in this shadow from light passing through sky holes. And they're yellow, all these little spots, because they're little images of the sun, which has a yellow tinge. Isn't that neat? Animals have spots on their backs, so they blend in with the dappled light. Here are some other light shade patterns, like the window panes, the blinds, the openings in the tunnel, and the fence. Like dappled light, these patterns are important to the image and most effective when superimposed on relatively simple scenes. The subject becomes less important than the light itself. When light passes through a sky hole, it widens to a cone of light, and surfaces cut through that cone, like pavement or grass, and they acquire round elliptical spots. So we can see these elliptical spots on the pavement. The direction, shapes, and sizes of these ellipses are determined by the height, shape, and sizes of the sky holes, perspective, the viewpoint, and the location of the sun relative to the surface. Compared to a low sky hole, a high sky hole creates an ellipse that is larger with softer edges. Perspective causes ellipses to get smaller and thinner with distance. The third factor affecting ellipses is the viewpoint. When I look down at a spot of light, my line of sight is nearly parallel to the axis of the cone, and in this position, the ellipses look nearly circular. When standing on the ground looking at the spots from the side, they look more elliptical. And finally, ellipses are affected by the position of the sun. The noontime sun shines through a sky hole, causing circular patterns on the ground. The evening sun going through the same sky hole causes ellipses. These are projections of the sun, just like the pinhole camera, where we see this tree upside down. So the spots on the ground are in fact little pictures of the sun. And if the sun has a bite taken out of it, like during an eclipse, then these little shapes on the ground also seem to have bites taken out of them. When painting dappled light, it's often better to paint the shade, as shown in black here, so that the spots of light are connected. This often works better than drawing the ellipses because they tend to be too geometric. And try to find a real pattern because it's always more believable than one made up. So that's it on dappled light, and please remember to subscribe.